Okay, so this is going to be about my theory of everything, which I kind of talked about I did a video a while back called To My Sons, which is basically talking about what I'm going to talk about right now. But that was for like children in case I die, and it's like addressed to them and like it's just I want to kind of do it again, but like take a step back and just basically be like, okay, this is the theory of everything. Whether or not it's correct, we will find out later. But for now, my unified theory of everything is, and when I say unified theory of everything, I mean I believe what I'm about to say is compatible with most religions. I think it's compatible with science. I think it's compatible with most things, which would make sense if it was correct. Like if it was correct, then theoretically, when you look at other things, it should be able to fit neatly into the thing I'm about to say, which I believe it does. So, in short, reality itself is built by consciousness, or a supreme consciousness, or maybe the only consciousness. But the point is this: reality, the universe, stars, light, matter, everything. Everything is created from a consciousness. Consciousness is not a biological side effect. It is not something that just living creatures have. It is the fundamental building block of reality. The universe did not create consciousness. Consciousness created the universe. And that is basically the theory of everything. And if you understand this, what I am saying, other things will make sense. Religion will make sense when they go, in the beginning was the Word, you know? In the beginning was the Word. All right, that's in John. That's a Christian idea. But most religions have that idea, whether it's Egyptian, Islam, most religions have the idea of like, God created everything. Now, if you replace the word God with consciousness, which is, I believe consciousness is what created everything, it's fine. God is just a word for this particular consciousness, or maybe the only consciousness. I kind of think it's just one consciousness that we all share. I believe that every living creature and tree and plant is basically sharing one supreme consciousness. It's just most people don't know that. Most people think that, you're Sally, you're Tim, you're Johnny, the dog might be named Skip, and that they're all these like individual biological animals that happen to have consciousness. And what I'm saying is, no, 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 no. The creator of reality and the universe, that consciousness is what is operating the dog. It's what's operating you, and it's what's operating me. When you see something through your eyes, or if you're blind, you hear something through your ears, it's not your brain that is hearing that. It is the consciousness inside of you that is hearing that. And then your brain has a reaction to it. Okay? Now, I believe this to be true. I believe it explains a lot about the sixth sense that sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. I think it explains the telepathy that some people have with other people. It's because it's the same consciousness. You're just better connected and can kind of communicate telepathically in weird ways. The reason why your gut feeling is 100% always correct for every human being on the planet is that gut feeling is literally the consciousness that created reality itself. So that is why the gut feeling has 100% accuracy. By the way, it does. It does. My gut feelings have 100% accuracy, and I know your gut feelings have 100% accuracy. And typically, when you don't listen to your gut, you regret it. And you go, oh God, my gut told me, and I ignored it. And then people die, typically, or get super jacked up. So like, for real, if what I'm saying is true, the idea of consciousness is the fundamental building block of reality itself, it also starts explaining some weird religious stuff and some weird stuff that every single human being has encountered. Because we all share the same consciousness, there are things about you that I can predict. Because I know that you have to have experienced it the same way, because we're sharing the same fucking consciousness that created reality. Even if you have a broken brain, even if you're schizophrenic, even if you're crazy, there are certain things I can say that have happened in your life that I know have happened to your life, even though I've never met you. An example I like to use is that You have always been in a situation, every single human being that I've mentioned, this has happened, where it's like, okay, you haven't talked to someone in a really long time. Maybe it's been 2 months, maybe it's been 6 months, maybe it's been a few years, but you start thinking of that old friend or that old family member, and then they call you on the phone that same day. All right, that's not unique to you. That is just a human experience that we have all gone through. Same thing with deja vu. Deja vu is described very incorrectly. Deja vu is always described as like you're doing something, but you feel like you've done it before. And it's like, that's actually like not what deja vu is. Deja vu is like your consciousness that created reality basically gives you a heads up to something, and then it happens down the road later, and then you get that weird feeling, but it's literally because that weird feeling came from like the creator of the universe, which basically, like every tree, every human, every animal, every object, they're basically what religious people would call God. This is very blasphemous to religious people, but if you look at what Jesus says in the Bible, whether it's the regular Bible or the Ethiopian Bible or even the Gnostic texts, if you look at what Jesus said, what I'm saying fits. Like, go back and look at Jesus quotes. Go back and think of like, hey, Joe said that consciousness is, the creator of the universe and what's operating us, and then go back to what Jesus said. Where he says things like, I and the Father are one. Right? Well, if consciousness created everything, and that consciousness is literally inside Jesus running his body, to an extent, because your brain is still making calculations and decisions, but the consciousness itself, the thing that's perceiving things, the thing that's feeling happy, the thing that's feeling sad, the thing that's feeling angry, that's basically like, the creator of the universe, God, or the supreme consciousness, whatever you want to call it. I don't believe that the supreme consciousness that created reality then created all these billions of other additional consciousnesses. I don't actually think that's required. I don't think it's necessary, and I see no reason to believe that. I think that we are God all at once. We are God manifested in billions of little forms. However you want to phrase it. I like to phrase it God all at once, because that is actually correct. Because consciousness is the creator of reality and like light, matter, and everything, that's why when you try to study certain scientific things, it gets weird. So, the reason why people believe in simulation theory, there's a couple versions of simulation theory. There's a wrong version and there's kind of a more correct version. So the wrong version is, because we can create video games and AI and stuff, how do we not know we're living in a simulation or a computer that some previous society on top of us built, right? So that's the one version of simulation theory that I think most people think is what's going on with simulation theory. That's not a correct theory. Most super hardcore serious simulation theory people don't believe we're living in a computer program. When we say simulation theory from a physics perspective, what we're saying is that certain things in physics get rendered out in real time, like a calculation. So like particles will behave differently depending on when you turn your instruments on, depending on if you're observing them. Like there was always this really freaky thing where we're like, why do particles and photons behave differently when we're observing them? That doesn't make any sense. Well, what I'm saying is that it does make sense if consciousness is the creator of the universe and reality itself. So if the atom came from that consciousness and we're living, that consciousness is running our body, yeah, when we look at the particle or the photon or the atom, it will get different. It will change. Because literally the creator of the universe is inside your freaking body as you're looking at this piece that you created some other time ago. That is why it looks like a simulation. That's why particles behave weird when we observe them. That's why certain things don't exist until we observe them. Like a lot of things in reality will not exist until we observe them. It's kind of like the idea of like, if a tree falls in a forest and no one's around, does it make a sound? Yes, it does make a sound. However, it gets into the idea of why people are confused and why some people who don't understand the nature of reality look at the way particles and photons react, and they start going like, there's something weird about this. And there is something weird about this. The creator of the universe is living inside of you. The creator of reality, you know? It's living inside of you right now. I kind of wonder when I'm looking at something through my eyes, I'm like, is it my eyes and brain that is receiving this information, you know? Or is it like God's consciousness inside of me receiving this information? And then my brain and my other stuff is just on top of that, stacked. But yeah. Two entangled photons look like a yin-yang symbol, right? And we also know with quantum entanglement that you can affect a particle somewhere over here and it'll affect a particle super far away from it, that it really should not affect it, but it does, you know? And then the idea that, like, you know, consciousness being the fundamental building block of reality, it just, everything fits into it, you know? Like, evolution could still exist with that being your fundamental belief. Any religion could still exist with that being your fundamental belief. You could be studying cosmology and physics, and that fundamental belief that consciousness is the building block of reality, any new thing you learn will not fight that idea. And so that's why it's either my idea is correct or it's just mad confirmation bias. But I would argue that I'm like, well, if it is confirmation bias, then I've got like a lot of religious and scientific and philosophical and colloquial data, you know, to support it. You know, that's why when they're like, well, what was before the Big Bang, you know? You know how scientists are like, there was nothing before the Big Bang, and that doesn't make a lot of sense. It works if you think consciousness is the fundamental building block of reality. Because how would you measure consciousness? It's like this magical, mystical force that you literally can't measure. You only observe it in animals when they're running around. And some people know that plants have it, because they do. But not everyone knows that plants have it. But yes, plants are conscious. They think, they feel happy, they feel sad. I'm not a hippie. But yeah, even the idea of like what was before the Big Bang, it's like nothing needs to be before the Big Bang. The supreme consciousness, you know, made it. Which some people would argue, oh, well, then you're just saying that God created everything. And it's like, if you want to call the supreme consciousness God, you can. But most religions don't think that God is living inside of you. They think that God gave you your soul, or you're an animal that is lucky. But like, really, from my perspective, Jesus has God's soul inside of him, but so do you. You have the exact same soul inside of you. You know, that's why Jesus was not super into religion and was like, follow me, I am the way to truth, you know. I am the way to the Father and I are one. You know, with John, in the beginning was the Word. You know, and the Word was God. In the very beginning, you know. Like the Bible in this flowery way, you know, is basically describing what I'm saying in blunter terms. You know, I'm just saying it in blunt terms. The idea of like, your consciousness is God, and your consciousness is the creator of reality. And it's your consciousness, you know. You're not God's little child, you know. You're literally a piece of that God. We all are, all at once. Our differences come from our biology, our human bodies, our human minds, the society we grew up in, our education level. That is the differences between why some people are happy, some people are violent. You know, some people are born biologically in a broken body. So, you know, if you put God's consciousness in a broken body, it's going to be some shenanigans, you know? It's going to be some shenanigans. So now you might ask the question of why? Why would the Supreme Consciousness do this? Why would the Supreme Consciousness create reality, come into these frickin' bodies and animals and plants and just play around or putt around? And I would argue it's because it's fun, you know? If I'm right, and the Supreme Consciousness created everything, and that Supreme Consciousness is living inside of all of us, I would recommend you look at our art. What is our art usually about? It's usually about conflict. It's usually about good and evil. It's not just sunshine and rainbows, because that's boring to us. It's boring to us if everything was going hunky-dory, perfect paradise, utopia. That's boring. It's way more. What are your video games like that you play? Are they about conflict or not? They usually are. Either you're fighting something or you're surviving in a survival game, trying to build a little house and cut down trees, whatever, you know? Every video game we play is about conflict. Most of the movies and TV shows are about conflict. Most things are about good and evil, about fighting, about violence, about mental violence or physical violence. But unfortunately, if you look around at our art, it's like that. And you could basically argue, oh, it's just because humans are sinful or humans are dumb or humans are animals. And I'm like, no, 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 no. It's because, like, we like it. You know? The Supreme Consciousness built this reality to have some fun, you know? But that's why it looks like a simulation. It looks like a simulation, the way physics and particles move around. It looks kind of like a simulation or video gamey, the way evolution works and the way time progresses, you know? But yeah, I currently believe that consciousness is the fundamental building block of reality, built everything. I think that same consciousness is operating every single animal. I think it's like sort of in the rocks and dirt, and I think it's in everything personally. I see no reason for it not to be. And then you look at something that like Master Yoda says, where he's like, you know, the Force surrounds us and binds us, and, you know, we're luminous beings, we're not this crude matter. And like Yoda's 100% right. George Lucas was ripping off like Buddhism or Punjab stuff. But the point is, it's like what Yoda's saying is correct, and what these ancient religions are saying is correct. And even what these science people with simulation theory, it's kind of correct, you know? Like everyone who doesn't understand the nature of reality is still kind of coming to the nature of reality's actual answer, which I find very interesting. Something to consider. Something to consider that most people... Actually, here's something I can predict about you. Remember, earlier I had said that, like, because we're all, you know, humans and we're all sharing God's consciousness, there's certain things I can predict about you without knowing you and without asking you. And you probably never thought about this, but I'm like, hey, you, person listening to this video, whenever you're thinking in your head, there's kind of two things going on. Did you notice that there's two things going on when you're thinking in your head? When you're thinking in your head, typically, you are talking, you're asking questions, you're playing things out loud. Maybe you're thinking about, what am I going to say to this person? Maybe you're planning for something. But the point is, when you're in your head thinking, there's two things going on. There's a person who's talking, hashing out things, throwing out ideas. And then there's also a person listening. And that is going on in your head at all times. And you probably never thought about this. I imagine 99% of people don't actually think about how they think. But what I'm saying is that when you think, there's two things going on. There's the human brain with human language, talking, hashing things out. And then there's this quiet other second thing that's listening. When your gut feeling goes off first. And then maybe after the words in your head start happening, maybe then you start asking questions of like, let's say you get a gut feeling of that person's a fucking creep, right? You will look at them, you'll feel it, you'll watch them like a hawk. You'll probably be quiet in your head for a while before the voice in your head then goes, man, that guy's a creep. What is he, a serial killer? Is he homeless? Like, what the fuck? Keep an eye on that guy. And what I'm saying is that there's two things going on in your head. And that the listener in your head, the one that doesn't speak, that is the supreme consciousness. The thing that's talking, that's you. That's your human brain. That's your biology. Those are your thoughts. You know, they're going to be different every single time you come back down here in a different form. Because you will come back down here in a different form. If you ever had a weird connection to an animal, this is going to sound very hippy-dippy. So I have a weird thing about seagulls. I really, for some reason that I cannot articulate, really like seagulls. They are like one of my favorite frickin' animals in the world. I don't know why. They're not particularly cute. They're not particularly cool from a bird perspective. But I have always just fucking loved seagulls. For forever. Since I was a kid. I don't know why. Decades later, thinking that like, oh, Consciousness is, the creator of everything, blah, 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 blah. You never really die. There's no heaven and hell because, the consciousness that created reality is eternal and it's living in us. So it's like if our body dies, the consciousness in us is going to go somewhere else. Maybe it goes back to the source. Maybe it goes into another. The point is it's multiple choice, honestly. It's going to be multiple choice when you die, like what you want to have happen to you. And when I say what's going to happen to you, I don't mean you, Jerry, Nicole, whatever your names are. I just mean like you, the supreme consciousness. Like, you're going to, that part of you is going to go and do whatever. But yeah, sorry, going back to the seagull thing, I kind of feel like I was probably a seagull back in the day. Right? People that believe in reincarnation, this also fits into it, doesn't it? The idea of like this consciousness is the building block of reality. It's weird to me that every belief that people have can fit into this theory of everything I have. So maybe it's just a cheap theory that's cheap, or maybe it's actually correct. I feel like it's actually correct. I didn't come to this on my own. I didn't come to this as a child and just stuck with it. This is just something that gradually, after years and years of science and philosophy and religion, I kind of feel like, this is what it is. It makes sense. Everything clicks together nicely. Reality makes sense. Good and evil makes sense. Pain and suffering makes sense. And the reason why you don't remember that you are the supreme consciousness in you is because when we designed this simulation, because all of us did, when we designed this simulation, we thought it would be more fun if we didn't remember. We thought it would be way more fun. You ever play a video game where you only have one life, right? Like something like Dark Souls or something with permadeath. If you're a gamer and you play a video game where you only have one life, holy crap, is it way more intense, isn't it? The fights in those games are more intense. When you mess up, it's more intense. It's way more intense. That's why people like those games. And so, as the creator of everything who made this simulation, I'm just saying that, that's why we did it that way. That's why when we come down here, we don't know that we're the creator of the universe playing. Because we decided it would be more fun to not know that. And yeah, when we die, we know it, and then we come back down and we get another reset. Just another life, another game, another game, another game, another game, If aliens show up, doesn't hurt my theory. Aliens could show up, it's not like my worldview gets destroyed in the slightest. That if the aliens show up, hey man, they're sharing the same fucking universal creator consciousness that I am, so whatever. Maybe they know it, maybe they don't know it. It's really nice, by the way. By the way, what I'm saying, some people know. And when I say some people, I'm like, I don't know. Probably like 100 million people know or less. But it's not enough. It's not the majority. But I'm like, about 100 million people know what I'm saying is true and understand it. That's what the whole enlightenment and meditating is about. Whenever they're like, oh, quiet your mind and just listen to the universe. The reason why they're telling you to quiet your mind is because your mind is the biological human brain with its thoughts. And if you can get that thing to shut the hell up, you can tap into your creator consciousness, which is living inside of you. That's why when people do meditate sometimes, they always talk about feeling like they're one with the universe, or they are the universe, or they feel like the entire universe, or they are everyone and they are no one. It is because they have tapped into the consciousness that created everything. And it is like a web interconnected with everything. So your worst enemy that might murder you or kill you, they're sharing the same consciousness you have inside of you. And that's a tough pill for people to swallow, but it is what it is. This is probably a terrible video that I won't post, but I don't know. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn it off and I'm going to listen to it and I'm going to be like, holy crap, is this just completely psychopathic or does it sound semi-okay? Anyway, everyone have a nice day.